I realised that the main interest for people at the moment is probably the, once again, the letters or the emails between Stearns and his parents that have been released. And I will cover them next. But I wanted to address this whole real estate thing. Now, I found it interesting that some people were like, oh wow, didn't know Stephan had a real estate licence. I think it has been mentioned in a few of the interviews. I think possibly by Jen, possibly by Chris. So it probably should have really not come as a surprise to most people. But it certainly opened up a can of worms. It got me thinking. I hadn't really paid that much attention to it because I thought, well, it was just Chris giving Stephan a job opportunity, right? And we know that Deb was a registered real estate agent for a while there also. And I was like, well, I always thought that was a bit odd. So this whole thing got me thinking, just the highlight on the fact that all three of them had licenses at one point in time. So, first of all, I just got curious and looked up everyone's licenses for starters and found out a few interesting things. But before I get to that, let's address this letter that Stephan got, cancelling or telling him to basically give up his real estate licence. And we'll talk about the reasoning for that. Well, I mean, the reasoning is obvious, but in terms of statute. Okay, so I'll go through this because I figure there's a few people that may not have seen this. Dear Mr. Stearns, this letter is to serve as official notice to you in accordance with section 455.2551 Florida statutes that a complaint has been filed against you and an investigation has been initiated regarding the allegations made in the attached complaint. Please note that confidential complaint information, to include examination information, social security numbers, blah blah blah, if any, have been redacted from this copy as they are exempt from public records disclosure pursuant to these statutes. I have been assigned to the case and will be in contact with you at the earliest possible time to schedule a mutually convenient appointment to discuss the complaint in detail. Mutually convenient. Doesn't this guy realise Stephan's not going anywhere? You may submit a written response to the information contained in the complaint within 20 days after receipt of this letter. Any response and or contact with the agency regarding this matter prior to personal contact with me should be directed to my attention. Please be advised at this stage our investigation is confidential. Yada 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 yada. Okay, let's go on. Now, I know some creators have just jumped in with all this FOIA stuff and not thought to redact addresses, but legally, I do need to redact this address because, of course, it is Deb and Chris's address. So I really can't be putting that out on the internet, even though I think most people know it by now. So, complaint number, subject name, Stephan Michael Stearns, subject, license, rank, real estate broker or sales, complaint name, complainant address, date of complaint, June 2024. Okay, so the complaint is dishonest dealing, and that's statute 475.251B. So this lists a whole bunch of things in terms of, like, one is just the discipline saying what they are able to do. In his case, they are requesting that he gives up his licence. And when you go down to B, it has this really, really long list, which sounds like you'd think, well, how does that fit? Because he hasn't been acting as a real estate agent. But if you have a look about third line down, has violated a duty imposed upon her or him by law or by the terms of a listing contract. But this is the important part, has violated a duty imposed upon him or her by law. In other words, has not gotten around to reporting the fact that he is currently sitting in jail facing criminal charges. By not actually reporting that, he's violated requirements under his licence. So while most of these do basically look at code of conduct specifically relating to real estate dealings, there are some code of conduct things which are separate from that. And from this, we'll move on for this, and I'll explain this a bit further. So this is the letter that they sent him. Settlement agreement to voluntarily relinquish licence for permanent revocation. Respondent, Stephan Michael Stearns, licence number SL blah blah, voluntarily relinquishes respondent's licence to practice the profession of real estate in the state of Florida. Well, he's not going to need it anyway. For permanent revocation, and states as follows. Respondent's purpose in executing this settlement agreement is to avoid further administrative action with respect to this case. Respondent understands that acceptance of this agreement shall be construed as disciplinary action against a respondent's licence pursuant to section 455.2271, I think that's an LF, Florida statutes. Licensing authorities in other states may impose discipline in their jurisdiction based on discipline taken in Florida. Meaning that if he had a licence in another state, he could still have that licence. Yeah, that ain't going to happen. 2. Respondent agrees to never reapply for real estate licence in the state of Florida. Respondent agrees to immediately cease practising real estate upon executing this agreement. Stop selling your cell. And to refrain from the practice of real estate until such time as this agreement is presented to the Florida Real Estate Commission. It's just a whole heap of legal gobbledygook thing. So I'm just going to skip over to the Florida statute. So basically it's saying having a licence suspended or whatever for a violation that would constitute a violation under Florida law. So basically it seems like him actually winding up in prison for those charges is considered enough of a violation to have his real estate licence revoked. Which is a good thing. But not that he's ever getting out, but shows you that they are on top of it. Now all this is pretty self-explanatory anyway. I mean, of course, they are going to revoke the real estate licence of someone who has been convicted, or has been charged at least, with the things that he has been charged for. Now, if he was somehow found innocent on both charges, well, both cases, then I guess he could argue the point. Although I suspect that there is probably a clause there whereby him not actually notifying them of the charges is probably enough to have him chucked out anyway. So I pulled up his licence details because I was curious as to how long he'd been licensed for. And he was licensed since 2013, which is curious because we know that he's done pretty much stuff all for his entire life. And of course it also seems that he's really not been involved in anything to do with real estate since like 2018 or 2017 or something, whenever it was that he was working for Chris. So I just found it curious that he still had a license. So I was looking at his rank, sales associate, and thinking, okay, so what does that actually mean? That means that, for starters, he has to work under the supervision of an actual licensed real estate agent or broker. What he can do in that role is he can assist with real estate transactions, such as showing properties, market listings, and negotiating sales. Keep that thought in your mind. He can assist with negotiating sales. I'm going to come back to that. Now, something I stumbled onto while I was going through all this is the fact that at the moment, Chris Stearns isn't registered as a real estate agent. This to me says that they've probably got no money coming in right now, and still Stephan expects them to be spending money on him. Because down here it says application in progress, which is really interesting because why is he not registered all of a sudden? Why is he now applying for a real estate broker or sales? Because he did have a license. So there's actually several listings for Chris Stearns, which I don't understand why. There's 2 listings that show that he is currently in the process of applying for a license. And then over here, you have a license that is current but inactive for real estate broker or sales and for rank broker. I don't know if the other application is applying for a different rank, but either way, he's not current either way with his licensing, which is curious. You'd think that someone who relied on real estate for their income would actually keep their license active. Now, I don't know if Chris has been responsible for some dodgy dealings in the past, because back in between 91 and 93, he was registered as a sales associate, like what Stephan was, for real estate broker or sales, and that status is listed as null and void. What does that mean? So null and void is the licensee has failed to renew several times. To operate under terms of this license again, the licensee would have to reapply for licensure or whatever, but I'm just going to say license because it's easier. So does he have a bit of a shady background with his real estate stuff? Why did he fail to renew back in 91 and 93? Now, there's no information in terms of what went on with the licensing between then and now. But I just do find it interesting that he's now having to reapply for his real estate license, even though you've got another listing there as being inactive. Now, either way, I'm going to move on from that because I don't know enough about real estate to really explain why there's different listings for Chris Stearns, and it is the same Chris Stearns. They are all under the same address. So I have no idea what's going on here. But I wanted to look at Deb Stearns. So she has been registered since 2005. Her status is also current and inactive, and her status is sales assistant, meaning that, again, she can work under the supervision of a registered real estate agent or real estate broker. And amongst those things, that includes negotiating sales. Why am I harping on this negotiating sales thing? Well, I was just trying to figure out why Stephan and Deb would both be registered real estate agents when it sounds like the real estate thing is Chris's thing. And it got me thinking, how does this family benefit from having the entire family registered as agents of some sort when Deb and Stephan appear to have been doing nothing and Chris seems to be the one who's the actual real estate agent? This is what I found out. And this is not me making accusations. I'm just saying I find this interesting because I really can't figure out why Stephan would have an active real estate licence when he hasn't done anything in real estate for 7 years. And I also find it curious that Deb has this real estate licence, even though right now it's inactive, but she's kept it current. So I was thinking, why, what would be the motivation for a real estate agent, someone who's registered as a broker, to have family members also registered as sales associates? And like I said, this is no accusation against Chris, but it's interesting. So there is a thing called dual agency in real estate. That is basically where your real estate agent can act on behalf of the buyer and the seller. It's illegal in Florida. In Florida, the closest you can get to that is to be a transaction broker. And the transaction broker will negotiate with the buyer and seller, but they don't have that financial interest in it. Meaning they're basically facilitating the sale. Sure, they make money from it, but they're not going to make nearly the amount of money that they could make if they were allowed to be a dual agent. Because the thing is, when you work as a transaction broker, there's limitations. First of all, you can't do anything that's going to be detrimental to either party because you're supposed to be neutral. So you can't exactly be working on behalf of one party to push the sale up or anything like that. The price of the real estate, etc., you have little control over that. Also, legally, you have to disclose as a broker, you have to disclose to the buyer any defects in the property. You also have to present all offers and counter offers. Now, there is still confidentiality. They don't have to disclose that one party will pay more or that one party will accept less. But see, having that knowledge doesn't really make a huge difference anyway as a transaction broker, because you can't influence the decisions of the parties involved. And here's the crunch. The reason that dual agency is illegal in Florida is because it does open up the possibility of profiteering. A dual agent can push the price up on a property, meaning that they're going to get more money from that property. And of course, they're getting fees from both sides. They can also far more easily get away with non-disclosure because, of course, as a representative of the seller, they don't have to disclose these things. And of course, as a dual agent, they also have confidential knowledge which helps them to basically push the way the sale goes. So that's why dual agency is illegal in California. There's ways of getting around it. You could have the same office, agents from the same office, dealing with the buyer and the seller using separate agents. Now, legally, there is a duty for them not to share confidential information between them. But of course, in the same office, who's going to know? So it got me thinking, if you're in a state where dual agency is illegal, you can't represent the buyer and the seller. You can only be a transaction broker, meaning that you can't give them advice, you can't control how much the property is being sold for, and you're not going to earn nearly as much as what you could earn as a dual agent. What if you had family members who were registered as sales associates and could actually advise one side, one party in a sale? Technically, you're not really being a dual agent because someone else is actually representing that person, not you. And of course, being family, it would be quite easy to get past that whole confidentiality pesky thing. Share information and make sure that you got the best deal that suited you as an agent. I'm not saying that Chris has done this, but I'm saying it would be very convenient for a real estate agent in Florida to get past that pesky dual agency law by having family members registered as sales associates who could then push prices up on properties and help pressure people to sell properties or help pressure people to buy properties based on confidential information that they probably shouldn't have. And that way, the money stays in the family and the family benefits quite well. It would certainly pay the cost of maintaining that license as a sales associate, wouldn't it? So again, I'm not accusing anyone of trying to skirt around the laws and find ways of doing dealings that are perhaps a little bit outside of the law. But I also find it really interesting that Stephan and Deb both have continued with their licenses. It's pretty clear that Deb Stearns hasn't worked as a real estate agent in quite some time, or as a sales associate. Likewise with Stephan. And the fact that he was basically put on notice and told you have to basically give up this license suggests to me that it was active. Anyway, just a bunch of random thoughts that I just wanted to share with people. Just trying to figure out why Stephan still had a real estate licence, and why Deb Stearns has kept hers current as well. So, on that note, I'm going to finish off there. Thank you for listening. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe. Also, please hit the like button. YouTube loves that. It gets my videos out there into the algorithm and gets them seen. And of course, please leave a comment below. Thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.